here, if you wanted to speak a little bit about the community.
Good evening. First, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight on behalf of the Buena Vista, Buena Borough, and Weymouth Township Municipal Drug Alliance. Your presence here tonight is the clearest possible evidence of the determination of all our residents, not just to fight the menace of drugs, but to fight and win the upper hand. JTAC is here sponsoring tonight. It's Joined Together Atlantic County. They're on the front lines of this battle. And tonight you will hear what is needed to stop the epidemic of heroin. It is not something that you read about in the news in our big cities. It's in every town in Atlantic County. Just as a side note to tell you how close this is, I run a support group for codependents. And one of our parents lost his son yesterday to a heroin overdose. He came to our meetings, he listened, and I'm sure he did what he thought was right to do. But this is everywhere, and we need to fight it. I'd like to introduce Laurie Smith, Community Incentive Coordinator from Atlantic Prevention Resources.
Thank you very much. I would like at this time to ask Reverend Mallory to go ahead and do the invocation for the evening.
Good evening. Let us bow. Almighty God, our Father, we are grateful that we have this opportunity to come together to face as a unity the great problems that we face, and particularly in this area of substance abuse. We ask that your divine spirit will prevail here and that we may grow in our understanding of the difficulties that we face, and that we will grow in understanding of how to respond. We ask that your presence will abide and that our hearts will be uplifted as well as our knowledge. Amen.
And I work for Joined Together Atlantic County. Atlantic Prevention Resources is the fiscal agency, and you'll hear from our director this evening. The Drug-Free Communities Grant funds Joined Together Atlantic County, and that's part of the Office of National Drug Control Policy. We also are funded through a state regional coalition grant, and we basically are made up of sectors throughout the community. So as you see here tonight, there are people from all different areas who work in Atlantic County. And we have legislators, school personnel, police officers, faith-based, parents, youth, who all come together and meet and do different interventions for substance abuse in Atlantic County. After when we first began the coalition, we did a year-long needs assessment for the entire county. And because due to that needs assessment, we needed to focus on marijuana use, underage drinking, and prescription drugs with a link to heroin. So you're going to hear, from each of the people tonight behind me and next to me about some of the issues that they're dealing with within their sector. What I'm going to do is actually first say that Atlantic Care does have representation. We have Dr. Brian Acunto, who sits on our opiate task force. He actually had a CME credit tonight, a class this evening, so he was unable to attend. But medical questions can be actually directed to our medical director, who will be here this evening, Sherry Daisy. We also have several school personnel who sit on JTAC as well as the opiate task force, but they actually, with back to school and starting this week, they were unable to attend tonight as well. But at the end, when we finish up, you will hear from Miss Judy Venefro, who is at Buena Regional High School, for what is actually going on within the community and within your school system. So with that, I'm going to actually go through the entire panel and introduce everyone, and then we'll go through and you'll see kind of how we have it laid out from prevention all the way down to treatment and recovery, and then talking about next steps and what we can all do as a community. And I would certainly like to thank all of you for attending this evening. I know it's a Monday night and you're taking time out of your personal lives to come out, but I think that we all feel this is such an important issue. It needs the attention that we are giving it. So tonight, you will actually hear from Robert Zlotnick from Atlantic Prevention Resources. He is the Executive Director. We also have Pastor Tom Douglas of Highland Community Church, Reverend David Mallory of First Baptist Church in Richland, Tracy Smith, she is our parent on our board as well as the Director of Speakers for Change, From the law enforcement, we have Chief Donna Higby with Galloway Township, Trooper Mark Capagna with New Jersey State Police, Captain Bruce DeShields with the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, Sherry Daisy and Sean Collins, both with Seabrook House, Charlie Curley with the Atlantic County Alliance, and then there are a couple of people in the audience who will also add some information for this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bob Slotnick, the Director of Atlantic Prevention Resources.
Thank you, Laurie. Atlantic Prevention Resources, founded in 1985, is the only professional agency serving Atlantic County whose main mission is the prevention of the harm caused by the use and misuse of alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and to some extent, violence. We incorporate evidence-based programming, which are programs that have been researched over decades to prove that they're effective. Programs that are published in peer-reviewed journals and show really effective outcomes. And so a large percentage of the programs that we provide are these evidence-based programs that are shown to be effective. We've had significant successes in the past. I just want to give you a couple examples. In around 2000, there was a very brief surge in the use of what was known as club drugs. Drugs that were used at raves and at nightclubs, things like ecstasy and GHB and Rohypnol and roofies. It was a very brief surge, but we participated in a statewide effort, and we did a very massive media campaign and awareness campaign, and the use of those drugs dropped off significantly in a very short time. And I'm just pointing that out because this might be a similar, even though what we're talking about up here is heroin, opiate drugs. We're going to be talking about alcohol, we're going to be talking about marijuana, but there are some similarities to the cycles that go on with these uses of drugs. So we also have been very successful over the years. I've been with Atlantic Prevention Resources for 21 years in combating youth smoking and to some extent adult smoking. And so those are just a couple of major successes that we've had over the years. What has changed in the last 10 years or so is that from solely providing evidence-based prevention program, mostly for youth and for families, we have moved into this coalition movement, a movement that is designed around environmental change or trying to change public policy or social and community norms. And so that's where the coalition movement and Join Together Atlantic County came out of. It is trying to bring people together to do something rather than reaching students on a one-to-one basis or on a classroom basis, is really reach a whole community or a group of communities, or in this case, a county. Join Together Atlantic County is an effort by nearly 75 people over the past 5 years who have met regularly to try to address issues in their own homes, their own neighborhoods, their own communities, and the whole county as a whole. And we participate with other coalitions in the state of New Jersey and throughout the country and try to share ideas and see what has worked and try to bring those right back here to our own communities. Just a couple of things that we've done. You'll see out on the table outside the display with the medicine chest. That is a mock-up that I had made just to display, just to show what it looks like when you put it in the medicine chest. But we've distributed hundreds of these lock boxes for free as paid for by our DFC grant. And we encourage people to take one. We have them out there today. Secure your medications in your home, even if you don't have children, even if you don't think that they're at risk. Certainly we want people to know that those are available. Also, there is a drop box here in this building, the first one in the state that was not located at a police station or at a hospital, I believe. And so these are the kinds of things that we do. We just distributed 100 of these at Stockton University for incoming students this year. We provided them at no cost because that's important for students to have at their disposal. So check out the lockbox out in the hall on your way out, and make sure that you know that if you have medication that is expired or that you no longer need, you can bring it here and dispose of it properly. Get one of these lockboxes. We've worked on educating parents about prescription drugs and all drugs, really. We're working to combat efforts to legalize marijuana here in New Jersey, and believe me, that is something that is coming, and we are getting prepared for that. We are also working still on underage drinking, and of course on youth smoking. Alcohol and tobacco use are going to kill far more people over the course of their lives than any other drugs, all other drugs combined. About 400-some thousand people a year still die from tobacco. That's about 3,000-4,000 people a day. So really a significant loss to our society. And we, even though Seabrook House is here from treatment, we did open a treatment center in 2009. We've been operating for the last 7 years. We have helped about 800 people. We've had over 800 clients in those last 7 years, and we have some really great success stories. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about our treatment program, but if you have any questions about that, Seabrook House would be probably better equipped to handle that. And that's it.
Thank you.
I want to thank Councilman Armato for hosting.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, I would like to introduce a special guest this evening. Assemblyman Vince Mazzio has basically been a champion in this area within the legislature. Between bills that he's going to talk a little bit about and things that we're constantly seeing, whenever we've had events, he's always showing up, showing support, reaching out to those within the field when they are discussing new bills to kind of get ideas and things like that. So I'm going to next ask Assemblyman Vince Mazzio can speak.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I want to thank John Amato for inviting me to come here. I had, being a legislator, I understand a lot of times that we pick areas that we, are specialized in or what we want to do. And when I became an assemblyman, the real problems of Atlantic City came to be where, people were out of work and casinos were closing. Along the way, I have a business in Northfield, and I'm related, Peter Mazzio. There's people that come in my store, suburban people who came up to me, and they were talking to me about their family members who had these addictions and problems and who were dying. And it always became, drug problems we always thought were in the urban cities, and these opiate addictions and heroin, as we know now, it's really hitting everybody. And one story that I tell a lot is that we service a lot of restaurants in our community, and there was one gentleman, his son kept picking up produce at our store early in the morning, and he would ask my brother or myself if he could get some change money from us, and he would just write the check for the business. We didn't think nothing of it, it was kind of, okay, yeah, we'll give you change because we have a retail store, But needless to say, he was buying heroin or whatever with this money. And his father came in and he says, my son has a problem. And unfortunately, a couple months later, he died. His parents went on a vacation and he died at his house. And shortly after that, I had a town hall meeting on September 25th. I think it was of last year. Tracy was there, and we give testimonials, and Dr. Bob Slotnick, who lives in Northfield, I was the mayor of Northfield, my chief's out there right now, ex-chief. We had Bob Slotnick and a panel came upon. There was about 100, I think about 150 people came to that town hall meeting. And that's when I took it upon myself that this is going to be part of my being part of the legislature and trying to get on the forefront, because I don't think the state, unfortunately right now, has caught up with the epidemic, if you will. And needless to say that there isn't one silver bullet that'll legislatively that you can do. I think it's collectively we're going to have to do certain things to combat this epidemic and this opiate addiction and heroin addiction, as we all know it. And some of the things that I talked to some family, and I'm sure you heard of the people here, the Schmenkes. I've worked with them a little bit. They're working on the area of sober living, and we're trying to draw up some legislation where people who go through the process of treatment centers, they go out, as many of you know, after it's all over, after 30 or 60 days, and they get right back into that environment. What we're trying to do is come up with some type of legislation that we could get some financing for sober living where they could be longer in a safe environment. So that's one of the areas that we're working on. And I recently, and was very happy to see the editorial about the Narcan in high schools, students from 9 to 12, where Narcans will be readily available through every high school in New Jersey. Why is this important? A lot of people say, well, no EMS have it. Well, that's too late maybe to save somebody. And if we save one life, and it's a nominal cost, and my understanding is that, it will be probably given to these schools, that'll be something very special. And what's really good and what's also behind this is the Nurses Association, they stand behind it. The school board administration, they stand behind it. And NJEA announced that they're going to stand behind this, having Narcan, because I think the idea of addiction, sometimes in these school districts that are, they think that, you can't put that in our schools, that, this stigma that something's the matter here. But, we're trying to be proactive now and instead of reactive, and you have to make changes and make sure that things happen in the right direction. So I'm happy to be here, and these are some of the things that I'm working on. And I have a chief of staff. His name is Marshall Spivak, and he works in my office, and we're in contact with a lot of these people that are here tonight. And believe me, if there's anything that you need from us, I'm going to be on the forefront and trying to help in my way that I can. And my office is on Tilton Road in Northfield. So again, thank you for having me, and it's a great opportunity for us to see where this is going to go. So thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention, at the end, we will have a public portion where you will be allowed to ask questions of the panel. We're going to do that one of two ways. We do have a microphone up, and you're welcome to come up and ask the panel directly. And also in the back, Committeeman Armato is set up. There are cards with a box and pens. So if you don't feel comfortable coming up and actually asking it openly in public, you can actually, during the session, put the question in the box, and we will get that at the end of the evening and ask the question for you publicly. So we just want to let you know, we do want to hear from you and actually have, you have a chance to ask the panel some questions. So with that, next up, we have our two faith-based representatives, and first is Pastor Tom Douglas and then Reverend David Mallory.
Thank you. Tom Douglas, I'm pastor of Highland Community Church in Galloway, and been there 26 years, retiring soon. But we have been involved with addiction in this way. Let me just kind of give you a little bit of background. I go and minister at the Atlantic County Jail. I've been doing that 25 years or whatever, taking Bibles around and ministering, having Bible study. We've also have worked with the Atlantic City Rescue Mission. We bring people from there to our church and to try to encourage them in their progress. We also, as a church, we declare the truth of God's Word and teach people how to live a victorious life. Now, having said that, the church, Christians are people, and they get into things too. My son is a classic illustration. My son graduated from Liberty University, raised Christian, raised in the church, listened to his daddy preach all his life, and when he got into the business world, ended up getting in drugs and alcohol and everything else, and before long, almost lost his family. Went to Seabrook House, as a matter of fact, and there really surrendered his life to the Lord, and came out, decided that he would go back to Liberty University and get his master's in counseling, and now a counselor, drug and alcohol counselor, with outpatient with Seabrook House. So, I'm thankful for that. But having said that, as a church, we can introduce people to a personal relationship with God, and without that power living within you, we see so often people go in and out, in and out, in and out of rehab with no power to live the victorious life. And that's what Christ can give. And we teach that, we share that. We have a Celebrate Recovery ministry at the church. There are several churches that are involved in Celebrate Recovery. There's also Reformers Unanimous, which is another type of Christian faith-based program in some of the churches in our area. And there are some churches that are kind of doing their own thing. There's one church, Crossroads Fellowship, it's called Stepping with Christ, and that's an addiction program. But all addiction programs basically are 12-step programs that take a person from I'm helplessly lost and have no power in myself to get out of this, to helping them work through steps with a sponsor to work finally through the program where they are strong enough then to help other people in that recovery process. So we're thankful for the involvement of the church, and we encourage churches to be involved. Don't look at addicts just as second-class citizens who we don't want anything to do with. And I think sometimes we start feeling better than everybody else, you know. I think probably if we ask, most of us have been affected with drugs, with alcohol, drugs, or tobacco, whatever, in some way. And so be careful of just writing people off, but really helping them to become the person God wants them to be. Okay, so thank you.
I'm David Mallory, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Richland. I've been there since 1969. I'm almost as old as Miss Benefield. I've had a dual career, one with the Child Welfare Agency of New Jersey, the State Child Welfare Agency, in which we evaluated homes where there was child abuse and neglect. And I will tell you, one of our deepest problems was the disintegration of families because of drugs. If you walked into some of the homes where substance abuse had just taken over the parents, you would not recognize that as a home in this country. It may be in a third world country. You would not recognize the floor, the dishes in the sink, the garbage on the floor, the excrement of animals, the cat, the dog, and everything. Some of the places that I've gone into were just unbelievable. I was with the agency for 42 years. And from 1978 or 79 to 1990, statewide our caseload grew from approximately 32,000 children to 62,000 children, almost double. And that was a result of the drug culture growing in our state. Not that it hadn't been here before, but it seemed like gasoline was thrown on the fire of substance abuse during that period of time. The problem of the disintegration of the family is phenomenal. 80% of all of our cases in which we had to get involved in families to protect children, 80% of them had some type of drug involvement. Alcohol, heroin, marijuana, you name it. And some of the children had to be removed from their homes, placed with relatives and in foster care. But this is one of the things that has stimulated my involvement in trying to work with our municipal alliance and through our church and working with families. A second problem that I recognized recently is which I hope our congressmen and assemblymen can help with, is the fact that we have these mandatory sentencing laws. And the problem with those laws are that kids who will just be on the periphery of a crime will be sent to jail as if they were involved. Let me give you an example. A kid was coming home, his friends picked him up, quote unquote friends, picked him up to bring him from Vineland to Richland. And on the way, they decided to stop by Michael W. Park they knew that there were some kids in there with some drugs. So they parked the car, told them, wait right here, we'll be right back. They went into the park and they robbed the kids of their drugs, their phone, and their watch, and they got back in the car, dropped him off at home. Well, when he was implicated as being involved in that car with those boys, he spent 3 years in jail. This was a kid who had graduated from Buena Regional. He had gone to the community college at ACCC, and he wanted to work in juvenile justice. And he spent 3 years. There's something that needs to be done. Another look needs to be taken at the mandatory sentencing laws, not only for kids who will do dumb things, not knowing. Thankfully, we do have the municipal alliance in the schools where children are helped to make smart decisions, good decisions about what's going on around them. One of the things that we did start at our church it's been about 15 years now, was an AA program. Strangely, and none of the men from Richland or the women from Richland come. They don't want to see their cars parked at church during AA time, I guess, but we get them from Hamilton, Vineland, Mays Landing. And the one thing about this group of people who come, men and women, is that they are so happy that they have gotten themselves separated from addiction to drugs and alcohol. You should hear them. And they help one another because they know how important it is not to be addicted. And they're happy. And they're not supposed to talk about religion too much, I guess, in AA, but they do. And they knew that they couldn't do it by themselves, and that there was a power above and beyond them. Let me just close with this story about, I know, Pastor, you've probably heard it too. You've probably used it in one of your sermons. I brought it too from somebody too. There was this Salvation Army. They worked very hard with the people who lived homeless and on the street, addicted. And one day they were walking out looking for men who needed to be brought to the place. They found this guy, and of course they said, come on over and have something to eat at our office. And he went over, and the guy was very happy that he was fed. And then he wanted, the minister tried to say, well, look, the Lord can help you. He said, I don't believe in all that stuff. He said, well, what do you believe in? I believe that, that Greyhound bus turned the corner. I believe that Greyhound bus is stronger than me. And the minister said, well, pray to the bus. So the guy who had lost his family, he left the place, and the minister didn't see him for about a month and a half. And when he saw him, he saw this guy who looked familiar walking down the street in his suit coat and his briefcase. And he said, you look familiar. Did you ever stop by the Salvation Army place? And the guy said, oh yeah, and I remember you too, because you're the guy who told me to pray to the bus. So I started praying to the bus. And then, you know what, things started changing. And after a while, my addiction just subsided and subsided. And you know what, I knew that there was a power greater than me that was helping me, and it wasn't that bus. And so somehow he got off. He was with the power that was helping him, and he got his family back and his job back. And I think that the more that we help people, whether they're families or individuals, the more that we help them to reach their destiny. the reason why they were born, why they're here, why God allowed them to walk on this earth. And that is the passion that I have, to help people reach the destiny that their Creator gave them with this love. Thank you.
I just want to mention one more thing here. There's going to be it's called a Do No Harm Symposium. It's a educational program for faith-based leaders in the fall. The date has not been set yet, but Lori is working on it, and she'll let us know when it's going to be.
Next up, we have Tracy Smith, who is a parent representative within our coalition, as well as the executive director of Speakers for Change. Tracy?
Hi, how are you? So I always say this, a great mentor of mine said, you know, if you're here today, you are part of the solution. So thank you for coming, because, you know, it is a community effort to make change. So, you know, thanks again. I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to tell you a story. I'm the new face of addiction. My family lived in Buena Township in a very nice house with a very nice yard. We went to church on Sunday. I worked hard. I was a good parent. Not a perfect parent, because I don't think one exists. I had two beautiful daughters. They played sports. They got straight A's. They did well. And then I found myself in a position where I received a phone call telling me that I need to look out because my 15-year-old daughter was doing heroin. At the time, I felt very alone and very confused and in denial. It's something right now that thousands of middle-class suburban families are going through. I'm the new face of addiction. It is a very nice household these children are growing up in. But we have a prescription drug epidemic where they're turning to parents and grandparents and neighbors and helping themselves to an ample supply of prescription drugs, which then is quickly escalating to heroin. I share my story because, you know, part of the solution is understanding now this is a whole new problem. No offense to the pastor, he's witnessed families with addiction and horrific situations where generations are born into it, and that still goes on. But there's a whole new problem that's existing today. I've been organizing an overdose awareness event, and I invited families to participate. One of the families was Jared's mom and dad, who owned a restaurant here in Atlantic County. Another nice family with the father an electrician and the mother working hard, Ashley Guido's family. And I could go on and on and on. We are in an epidemic, and you need to understand that no one is immune. You can have the best family, and it is not your fault. But there are things you can do as a family member. And the first thing, and the most important thing, is to get support and education. And I really don't care where you get that from. It can be from your church. It can be from a licensed counselor. It can be from Naranon and Al-Anon, which are support groups for alcoholics and people struggling with addiction. There are family support groups. I think our councilman runs one here for codependents. There are various support groups out there. But the most important thing that you can possibly do is go get some help, get some advice, because this is way out of your comfort zone, excuse me. So in other words, you know, when your child gets sick with cancer or leukemia, God forbid, you have a whole support system in place. You have family members and doctors and nurses and all sorts of support groups. There isn't that kind of support for addiction. You have to kind of go find it. It's out there. And, you know, it's nothing to be ashamed about. And that's why I talk openly about our journey with my daughter. I also talk about it because there's hope. We have lost an enormous amount of people here in Atlantic County, but if you can get help as the family members and for your loved ones, they can recover. My daughter is now 20 years old. She works at a sober living house for women. She attends college and is taking social work classes. She has a boyfriend, she sponsors other young women, and she is a joy. That same young woman in active addiction was a nightmare. And the disease of addiction can perpetuate ugliness within a family unit. And that's why y'all need to get support in education. There are studies that show when the family recovers, your loved one also has a better chance. It's important. It was a lifeline for me, and I extend that lifeline now to other families. And I also share the story so that you understand it is nothing to be ashamed about. Addiction is now recognized as a disease in the United States. It can be treated like any other disease, but you have to step out and talk about it. When your child is sick with the disease of addiction, it's hard to recognize it as an illness. You want to be angry. You want to punish them. You do not understand what is going on. You know, a child that steals money out of your purse. But these are all symptoms of the disease. So I encourage everyone here, I'll answer any questions, but if you have a loved one, if you know of someone, if you suspect that somebody is using, I really strongly recommend that you seek out some of these supports that we have. And everybody in this room is part of that support. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Next up, we're going to move back up top to our law enforcement group. And we have Chief Donna Higby with Galloway Township Police Department, Trooper Mark Capagno with New Jersey State Police, and then Captain Bruce DeShields with the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Committeeman, for having us, and Lori for putting this together. Honored to be here, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Trooper Compagno or Captain DeShields, but I'm sure they would agree with me in letting you know that law enforcement is very, very aware of the drug and alcohol problems that we have. A lot of times people say, what are the police doing? What are the police doing? I can let you know that no longer is it just strictly a targeted enforcement on arresting people that are dealing drugs or going after the businesses that are selling underage alcohol, especially in the town that I come from, having a university now in town and a lot of not just high school students, but college students that can go in and purchase for other people. We've learned over the last couple of years, especially with the prescription pill to heroin epidemic, in addition to other drug issues, that you have to take a holistic approach. And what do I mean by that? We have the prescription drop boxes to get those types of things out of the senior citizens' homes, out of regular people's homes. Take that stuff off the street. That, in addition to going out and doing enforcement and different search warrants that we can do to get these drug dealers and drug houses out of our neighborhoods. Working with the schools. One of the biggest thing that's helped us is we've held a couple parent symposiums, because I can't tell you, listening to a lot of the other comments, what does a drug user look like? It's not what you think it looks like, okay? It looks just like me and you and my kids and your kids, and it's not even something that you can detect anymore. You're not looking for things like marijuana that you can smell or things that you're gonna recognize. These drugs are colorless and odorless, and you wouldn't know what you were looking for. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is go out and educate parents what to look for, because we hear that a lot. Not my child. This isn't going to happen in my house. And it's so important to have parents like Tracy go and talk in the community so people can see. Mom and dad's still together, nice home, both work, kids are in sports, they're in everything. This isn't going to happen to me until it happens to them. And it's heartbreaking for everyone, including law enforcement. And it has to be a community effort. And I work in one of the largest municipalities in the state of New Jersey. So making that a community effort is a very, very hard task, but that's the reason why you see people representing every single group in your community here, because it has to be a coalition. It can't be, I'm going to rely on the school teacher to make sure that my kids not talking to the bad kids at school, or, you know, the police better do something about this because I'm too busy going to work. Or, you know what, we go to church every single Sunday and I know the pastor's gonna catch this, or the youth group minister is keeping an eye on my kid. We all have to work together. No matter how big or small your community is, there has to be communication across the board. There has to be openness and people willing to have the conversation. Maybe it won't be your child, but it might be the kid next door to you. It might be your sister's child or your brother's child, or something that you recognize that they don't. One of the other things that we've been doing is teaching parents how to search your child's room, what to look for. Again, I can't tell you how many people will say to us in the police department, I can't search my child's room, that's their private space. Listen, you are doing them you are not helping them. You are literally, it's an injustice if you are not going through their things and you are not searching their rooms. So we show parents, we actually set up a lot of the symposiums we go to for parents and kids. I have my detectives come in and we actually have things that we've taken out of cars, out of search warrants. And it could be something that looks like a water bottle that you never know, or like an Arizona iced tea container where the bottom comes off, screws off. And it could just be that you find that and your child stores their money in there, or they're storing drugs in there. So you have to look for these things and you have to take notice. Has that canister been sitting on their nightstand for 5 weeks? You know, most parents go, oh, they're just lazy and they're not cleaning their room. You have to be proactive, and we want to help you be proactive and show you what to look for. So I would say that on top of having like the prescription drop boxes, I'm very proud that every single one of our officers in Galloway Township carries Narcan. We've been carrying it for 9 months. We're one of the first agencies in Atlantic County to carry it, all of our officers. And with saying that, we have a self-funded EMS squad in our town, so that's a difficult thing that I know that JTAC and Municipal Alliance has been trying to help with funding to carry Narcan. We're very fortunate that our ambulance squad purchases that for the police department, and they replenish it when we use it. But in the 9 months we've been carrying it, we've had 18 saves, just the police officers. That's separate from the ambulance squad. So, you know, it's a huge issue, not just with heroin, with drugs and alcohol. And the biggest thing I have to stress is really just working together. I will tell you, the schools are phenomenal. Please don't be concerned about your schools being on board with this, because although I don't go everywhere, I'm telling you, the schools have been so cooperative with us in wanting to push the message out, welcoming law enforcement in to talk to the students, talk to them about anything, walking away so that the kids feel comfortable asking our officers questions about things. So that's something I know people say all the time, that, you know, I don't know what they're doing in the schools. I will tell you that the schools are really proactive in this, and I think that's phenomenal. So really just, even as a community member, if this hasn't happened to you, and hopefully, you know, thank God it never will, but you have to be proactive in your community and get the awareness out, because it could happen to, again, someone you know. So I really appreciate, you know, you asking me to be here, and we'll be here for questions after too.
Okay, good evening. My name is Trooper Campagna. Been in state police about 11 years. I work out of Buena, which I cover everywhere from Folsom to Corbin City, where there's not local law enforcement. But I have the opportunity with the position I'm in now. I work in a lot of schools. I work in 10 schools in our area. Also work with the municipalities and the mayors, and it introduces me to a lot of people, gives me the opportunity to work with a lot of kids, and sometimes I get to talk to some kids on personal levels. I get to do some drug and alcohol prevention with some of the schools, and I've done a lot of different stuff in my career. I've done undercover work, and I've worked in Camden, I've worked in Atlantic City on some heroin jobs and stuff like that. Worked with the DEA at the airport, all kinds of different things. And to be honest with you, even taking all that heroin off the street and things like that, it means more to me to be able to talk to kids and hopefully prevent some of these kids from doing this stuff. Sometimes just getting in their head, just making them realize that it could just be that one pill that their friend gave to them. That could that one choice to take that pill, that could change the direction of their life and possibly destroy their life. That's putting them on the road to basically destruction, from drugs. Sometimes just hanging out with the wrong kids, and they're not really sure you know, well, I don't know, I don't really have that many people that like me. I need, these kids are cool to me, they treat me good. And sometimes that's all it takes. And then they want to they want to do what those kids are doing, and they don't want to look bad, so they'll take that pill. And I say pill because, and I know this is directed mostly towards heroin, but as most of us know, the pills are probably 95% of what's turned into heroin. They get the pills because they're either prescribed for an injury, they get them from a medicine cabinet, and when they can't afford the pills anymore, I'm telling you, people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars a month, sometimes $5,000 to $10,000 a month on pills until they lose their job, until they can't support it anymore, and that's when it turns to heroin, because heroin's way cheaper than pills. And I'll be honest, the heroin, it's not necessarily just the heroin that's killing people these days, it's everything else that's mixed into the heroin. They're mixing fentanyl and all different chemicals into the heroin that's 10 times or more times stronger than the heroin. And to be honest, people don't know what's in the heroin. There's no way of knowing what's in it. They're mixing medications with the heroin. For instance, calcium channel blockers, which is a blood pressure medication, changes your blood pressure, so supposedly makes the high better. The problem is that these chemicals that they're putting into the heroin is causing people not only to overdose on the heroin, but to overdose on the chemicals. And although the Narcan is great, and a lot of times it can reverse can bring the person out of the overdose, with these other chemicals, that's why so many people are dying these days, because from the heroin and all these chemicals, because the Narcan doesn't work on everything. It doesn't work on the other stuff that they're mixing in with the heroin. So I mean, yes, we've been carrying the Narcan for a long time. All the troopers have it, but it's not working every time. And I mean, the amount of Narcan that we've been using is unbelievable. I mean, it's increasing almost daily. The amount of times that we have to use it, and the local ambulances have to use it. But I guess the biggest thing is, in my opinion, is prevention. And don't think that because you come from a good family or you come from a good area that it's not going to happen to you, because let me just tell you, I've seen it. I've seen people that were in the military, had an injury, were good people, big hearts, or hard workers, come from great families, always did the right thing in sports. And sometimes, drugs don't discriminate. They can turn a great person into a bad person. And I'll be honest, a lot of the people that we deal with, a lot of the criminals that we deal with, they came from a good family. And, they were taught everything right until they got either a prescription from a doctor. It doesn't always mean that they did it the wrong way either. I know people that, for instance, did X Games, backflips on dirt bikes and all that kind of stuff, and had a bad injury, never did drugs in their life, never even drank, didn't do anything, and started taking prescription drugs, Percocets, because they had a lot of pain from the injury. And when the doctors finally cut them off, then they had to start buying them, off of the streets. And, the next step is heroin and overdose. So anything that we can do to prevent this kind of thing, to educate everybody that, it's not just, the drug addicts. You don't have to be a drug addict to all of a sudden start taking, pain pills or Percocets or heroin. But people need to know that, I guess, one of the other important things is people's bodies are different. Everybody's different. And some people, the way that their chemical, makeup is in their body, some people can take one pill and be addicted. They can, do one drug and they're addicted. They can't get away from it. And other people, they can do drugs and walk away from it. So, but you don't know that, and nobody knows that. So any time, you need to teach these people that they have a choice. Everybody has a choice. And sometimes that first bad choice that they make can send them down the wrong road to destruction, to an unsuccessful life, like I said, we deal with a lot of criminals, and most of the criminals that we deal with somehow correlate back to drugs, somehow. You know, they're stealing stuff, you know, they're breaking into houses, they're, you know, doing whatever because of the drug. They need the drugs, they need the money. It's in their mind. You have to understand what their mindset is. You know, we need food and water to live. Drug addicts need the drugs. In their mind, they need the drugs to survive, or else they're going to get really sick. They're going to be, you know, thrown up and everything. So they need that drug. So they need to steal whatever or do whatever to get that money so they can get that drug. I'll leave it at that. I mean, you know, I'm here. I'd love to help anybody if I can. You know, like I said, I talk to a lot of the kids in the area, in the schools. I try to be personal with the kids. I don't go into the schools to try to lock everybody up. I go to try to build relationships with, you know, with the kids so that they can come to me. You know, I'm not going to try to get them in trouble, but they can come to me if they have questions or concerns about a friend, or, you know, even about themselves. And, you know, I'm not just going to, you know, try to lock them up. I want to try to help anybody that I can. That's what I want to be here for. So thank you. I appreciate you inviting me, and, you know, hopefully together we can improve this. Thanks.
All right, good evening. My name is Bruce DeShields. I'm a captain with the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office. I'm the commander of the Guns, Gangs, and Narcotics Unit. On behalf of Chief Dooley and Prosecutor Ruberton, thank you for inviting us. My job is to enforce the laws for the state of New Jersey, the drug laws. My unit's job is to target mid-level and upper-level dealers. Part of the reason why we're here tonight is that what we're seeing is that, you know what, we're getting people that are younger and younger that are getting hooked on this. And from what you've heard from everybody else, that truly, that once they get involved with this, and the rest of their life is going to be a struggle. You know, the state understands it, the courts understand it, you know, they look to start drug court programs and other things of that nature. But the unfortunate thing is that what we have to remember is, you know, this isn't like the old days, you know, where you could look at somebody and say, hey, you know, that happened on the other side of the tracks. You know, you got to remember, the younger people nowadays have more and more stuff that's thrown at them, you know. Everybody has a computer, everybody has a smartphone. You know, you have kids that, you know, they're so savvy now with, you know, you want to surprise yourself. When you go home tonight, go on YouTube. All right? Go on YouTube and type in juveniles and type in drugs. And you will see that there's so many things out there that they have to teach these kids on how to try to beat tests, you know, how to try to respond, like when you go home and your parents sit there and talk to you. You know, one of the things I tell everybody is that, you know, in the old days, you used to think that if my kid was in the house by 8:30, that they're safe. Not nowadays. You know, people go inside the house, they're inside their room, the whole world is at their fingertips. You know, just because they're in that house does not mean that they're safe. They got half the world is out there. These guys have chat groups, they have communication things. You know, they have people out there that, you know what, that'll give out free samples, you know, of drugs just to get somebody to have a taste of it. Now, this is some of the things that happens, is that, you know, in the old days, if you think back that, you know, when we were all in high school, that, you know, hey, you worked hard all week, so guess what? Hey, we got together on the weekend, we picked up a six-pack, you know, after football practice, and we all went out and everybody had a beer, you know, we relaxed for a little bit and we talked and it was cool. But nowadays, if you look at it, majority of young people that get hooked on heroin was given it by a friend. All right? And what you're talking about is, you know, when you hear about prescription drugs, you know, somebody can go pay $25 for an Oxycontin. All right? But for $6, all right, they can buy a bag of heroin. All right? And heroin right now, because it's cut with fentanyl, is so strong, all right, that the fentanyl itself can be anywhere between 15 to 100 times stronger than the heroin. All right? One of the things that we do in the state of New Jersey is every time that there's an arrest and there's a bag of heroin that's seized, if it has a stamp on it, we send that information to the ROC. All right? And then what they do is they send it out in an alert, and we get these every day. And what we try to do is we try to match the stamps with the location so we can try to get an idea of, you know, where this stuff is coming from. All right? Another thing that we'll do is that, you know, I printed out a thing today that over the weekend, there was a batch of heroin, I think it was called Batman or whatever, that caused them 15 overdoses in Camden, all right, in a weekend. All right, they put an alert out, they tracked it, and, and we showed that same stamp of heroin running through 9 different municipalities, from Camden all the way up to the Toms River area. So we're trying to put all these things in place so we can try to track this. But the big issue is that as a community, that the only way that we're going to put a dent is that we really have to work together. And we really have to communicate with each other. And we really, have to take our blinders off, because I guarantee that just about every person in this room knows somebody, all right, that's either lost somebody or knows a family that, that have friends that are going through this. Look, I've been a law enforcement officer now for 35 years. A close friend of mine just came to me because her son is on heroin, and she was embarrassed. So what I did was that, I took her, to one of those public forums and sat through the class with her so she could learn how to use the Narcan and all the other things. Try to go out, and find help for them, because, this is what's happening in the world nowadays. And honestly, if we don't get together and work together as a community, we're going to lose this. Because you better believe that every day we're looking at it and we're getting in more and more synthetic heroin. We're getting more and more fentanyl. The state right now, we've tracked 9 different types that come in from China and from Mexico. And the one from 2 weeks ago, we got notice on that this stuff, what they're putting in there, it was elephant tranquilizer. So imagine, something that's made to knock down an elephant, all right? And people are putting in this stuff. So again, I know that sometimes the criminal justice system can be confusing, but now you've seen my face. I've been around a long time. I'm with the prosecutor's office. I would be more than happy to give you my number. If you have a question about something or something concerns you, I ask you to call me, and believe me, no question, just do it. Please don't think that you're wasting my time, because honestly, I'd rather save a life, than put somebody else behind bars. But if that's what it gets to, I have no qualms with, doing that, because that's my job, and that's what I took. But on the same token, also as a parent, I also understand what everybody's going through. And again, I know that sometimes it can be confusing, but sometimes all you really need is somebody to listen to. And that's part of the reason why we felt it was important for the prosecutor's office to be a part of this coalition, because we want everybody to know that yes, it is. It's a community. All these people here, you have law enforcement, you have religion, you have medical, you have facilities. Everybody's here because of one purpose, that we realize that if you look at the numbers, and Charlie's going to talk about that, I don't want to take his thunder, but for the amount of Narcan that we're putting out, we're giving it out almost like tap. It's unbelievable. And the stronger it gets, you have more and more people that, they're driven to it, and they want to go after it. We put alerts out, and sometimes we laugh and we say, all we really did was we just gave that guy more business, because everybody wants to go find that killer bag. So again, thank you very much for having me. During the course of the questions, please, if you have a question about anything, please ask.